Hey everyone, Francesca here, out on maternity leave. What you're about to hear is a bonus episode from the archives originally recorded for the Frantifa, the Bitchuation Room's awesome patrons. They get new bonus content every week. And if you're thinking, hey, that's cool she's releasing stuff while she's out, and damn, that's a good story, and I should join the Patreon and support a new mom who's going to raise her kid to beat the crap out of Mitch McConnell as a 15-year-old so she can't face any hard time, then do it. Join the Patreon, patreon.com/bitchuationroom. You get perks like shoutouts, 20% off all merch, special access to AMAs, and a special edition of the weekly roundup from me while I am away. And if you can't do that right now, I get it. Just make sure to leave this podcast 5 stars on iTunes. Thank you so much and enjoy. One of my favorite clips of the week, again, this is not from AFPAC, which I want to say as the Aflac duck, because it makes it less scary and sad. But this is from CPAC, which is supposed to be like the not knockoff, like the OG, the one that's like, we don't say the quiet part out loud.
The all-star game for all the conservatives that happens every year.
Yes, and this year in Orlando, Florida.
It seems like they have more than once a year. Is that just?
Well, they have spin-offs, but like this is the main one. Like I think this is like the main one that happened. I think so.
That's how I always feel. I feel like every other day I'm like, oh, I'm fucking another CPAC. But yeah, I think it might be like, CPAC Texas or CPAC blah. But just so you guys know, Trump still the favorite candidate for CPAC. 59% want him as a candidate. DeSantis polling at 28.
That's pretty good. That's actually not bad for DeSantis, to be honest.
Oh yeah, better
He's
look
got
out.
to get his sleaze factor up. He's got to get.
And then you know what? You know who's you mentioned this in the actual show. The reason why Abbott is, if you look at it, Texas and Florida, whatever Texas does, Florida ups it, because Abbott and DeSantis are trying to get that 2024 gig.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're like planting like Me Too stories about themselves to come out and be like, see, I am a piece of shit. Like they really want that.
I grabbed her by the ass.
Yeah.
Well, 20 years ago, a guy like DeSantis would have been out of here after he yelled, "Yeah, where's the disease? It hasn't arrived." Remember that was beforehand. He was saying there's only 3 cases. That's what's frightening.
And 58,000 people died under DeSantis's watch during Delta.
Fucking yeah. That's how you know that the Republican Party is a cult. Because like that's cult behavior. It's a death cult. But specifically, that's the behavior of a cult. You're presented with new information. Your guru lied to you. And you're like, no, that was just part of the guru's ultimate plan.
That's right.
And now we're all going to,
Stephen Hassan, I don't know if you had him on the show. He's an interesting guy. Stephen Hassan wrote a book about the cult of Trump. He used to be a former cult member, and like he spent his life deprogramming people, and he sober guy. But he wrote, it's a cult. He said it's a very cultish behavior. The right wing has become, I call it a radicalized, weaponized pro-death cult.
Indeed. And
but QAnon's real though, right?
Oh, sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Not everything is a conspiracy.
Well, I mean, Andy, of course, is Satan and the leader of the globalists. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I thought that was just sarcastic. Oh, they mean that. Okay.
You better get on it. You've got a lot of work to do tonight.
Yeah.
But one of those aspirational sort of little fuckwits in the Republican orbit is Charlie Kirk, whatever, Turning Point USA, darling or head of, I guess, also questionable funding from Turning Point. He was at CPAC and he's having a conversation, and I'm sorry I don't know this woman's name. I apologize because I kind of actually like her. But he's having this conversation about why we need to do things like make housing more affordable, because unaffordable housing right now is turning people. It's making people a certain way. It's turning them on to certain ideologies. Let's take a look at this.
Right, and so, but what this does, and you're a conservative, so you're not going to become a left-winger, but I want you to imagine, though, if you weren't as informed as you, and you see your rent go up $800 a month or whatever, which is happening in Phoenix, you can't buy a home, you become a socialist really quickly.
I would.
And I'm trying to warn conservative, older people, you don't understand how expensive and how hard it is for a young person to just survive right now.
It seems impossible. And even if I think I'm making money at some, I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like, this is a lot of money. It has gone so fast because of the rising inflation.
Food, travel, all of it.
I'd like to think maybe I wouldn't be a socialist, but also, I mean, I think it also gives us hope. So what I'm noticing with some of my liberal friends, and maybe you've seen it as well, but people are starting to wake up and look at what policies they've put into place with the Biden administration, and that's kind of waking...
No, totally. I completely agree. I just think there's an even bigger opportunity, though, to say to the young person that's paying too much rent and is not having kids because it's too expensive, we're the party that's going to make it easier to do those things.
Yeah.
So there is no conservative out there that can say America looks worse when more young people own property, get married, and have kids. America becomes more conservative when that happens. But instead, we're creating a generation of renters. It is the least property owning generation in history, the least married generation in history, and the least children in history, right?
Yep, that's me.
Well, but I'm
no, I'm
not.
just kidding. I make jokes.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just saying though but you're part of a society that was designed that makes it hard for those things.
No, absolutely, it's difficult.
And we need a national recovery program to make it easier.
I think so. I think it's a great idea. And what you're doing is huge too. Some of your staff at Turning Point, I've been able to watch them move to Arizona and work for you for a little bit, buy a house or buy some property, and I love to watch girls my age. They're just absolutely flourishing, and it's because of some...
Oh, I don't know. This gets gross. This gets girls my age flourishing after they work for you. I don't like that. But I love this duo. Like, I want to see this duo all the time because she's just this cartoon. Yeah, I would never be a socialist. Yeah, I might be a socialist. I'd like to think I wouldn't. It is hard.
I thought you really liked her.
I know. I like her. I like her because she's such a wonderful little idiot. Like, she's
there's
such
a naivete there. There's a simplicity and a sweetness also, and a naivete there. And then he's just a moron,
right?
And a right wing ideologue.
And he's so close to, like, it's like, you know, when you almost have enough extension cords and you're just like,
maybe the Republicans could have social programs, or they could introduce some social programs.
Yeah, you know, maybe if there was a rescue plan or some kind of,
child
I don't
tax
know,
credit.
American family rescue plan we could pass.
Well, you don't have to call them social programs. Maybe don't call them
no
social programs.
Can I tell you a difference between...
Call them personal property defense programs and just do literally everything the Biden administration is doing. I'm sorry, you guys. This is just too perfect. He's too much of a fucking moron.
But you know what the scary part is? But this is what that sad part is. If the Republicans are so extreme, and it's just not me saying that. You know, when they did a VDEM study a couple of years ago that came out and measured all the right-wing movements, the Republican Party is one of the far-right movements in the world, further right than the National Front in France, and then Vox in Spain. Yeah, it's amazing. And so with Hungary, what they do is they're not stupid, right? Orban says, I'll give you religious ethno-nationalism, but I'll give you some security. I'll give you some money. I'll give you, the government will help you. Here's some healthcare. Here's education. Republicans are so selfish and so self-destructive. They're like, what they would do if I was a Republican, I hate giving them free advice. I would run on the religious ethno-nationalism. And then as soon as I get in power, paid parental leave. I gave you something that Democrats did.
Right.
Let me subsidize childcare.
Yes.
Dude, you would win. You would the tables will turn. Like, it's over. But they're so selfish. They're so Ayn Randian in their hideousness that they won't do that ever.
Yeah, and as if they can turn poor people into fuel yet. I mean, they're working on it, but they can't. They haven't been able to. So what the fuck is the point? It's interesting you say that, though, in terms of that's a good strategy, because when you see someone like Charlie Kirk saying this, it does kind of gut you when it comes to clearly Democrats haven't actually taken up a real populist mantle. There are the programs, they do exist, but it's not. I mean, I'm not saying we'd ever reach Charlie Kirk, but it's very upsetting that it's like there is this fake populist space that right-wingers have been able to successfully move into. And that, you know, you even have people like, why don't the populists just align the far right and the far left? And leftists say this. Shit, leftists say this all the time.
Sure.
Oh, we can ally with the far right just on, you know, a bread and butters issue. Fuck that. No.
Isn't that crystal ball? Is that the whole crystal ball shit?
She does do that quite a lot. That is
a
her
lot
whole
of times
shtick.
I've seen they're also very white. the white leftists say that because the Jews and Francesca and Wajats don't really,
Yeah.
we don't really survive in that equation.
No, it's true, and yes, they're not all, there are some token POC that whose politics I really hate, but I do. It's just those kinds of moments where they're like, "See, all you have to do is appeal to them." Well, them is hella racist. You have to actually fight against fascism while
Yes,
also,
that's right.
building an alternative and showing folks. I mean, in terms of healthcare, look at it. It's just ripe for the plucking. And the fact that we don't see moves from this administration to even go for, like, after coming out of a pandemic, some single payer options, it's just dead in the water. People get reamed over Medicare for all as if that's so extreme. And
It's
it pulls so well. It's the
yeah.
one thing people truly is bankrupting folks.
No, but it's also, if you look at it, it's a problem with America is that whiteness, I would say, are catering to whiteness and to wealth. The corporations, the policies, the lobbyists, people forget that oftentimes Democrats are just as susceptible to it. And the problem is that Democrats are having this type of reawakening. Same thing with the right wing. The right wing is coalescing around like the hard right. We don't care if they're Nazis or white supremacists. And you
Right.
see the splintering of the Democratic Party, where you have that report that came out last week. I don't know if you covered it on your show, where it's pretty much is like we have to be Republican light to win over Chad
Mm.
and Chet and Stacey, who haven't gone through for us for like 50 years. Throw the darkies under the bus. That's pretty much it, right? Whenever they're talking about wokeness, they're talking about people of
Yes.
color, right? And then somehow people of color then will be blamed for not coming out in full force to vote for the party that abandons them, right? Instead
Every
of
time.
being,
Young
yeah,
people and people of color. Oh, well, I guess they just stayed at home. Fucking
well,
give people a reason.
where's BBB? And those the progressives who knew. That's why I kept telling people, you always Democrats use the weaponized language of the right against their own base. It's like stunning. James
Yes.
Carville blamed wokeness and the squad for
I
the
can't.
loss of Terry McAuliffe
I
in
just
Virginia. It's remarkable. It's
And he's lost
remarkable.
his
turn
appetite.
down when kids turn down your protesting. Your protesting is too loud. He's like an old horrible man who's upset. It's like
Yeah.
I got so mad when they said people have the right to say defund the police. This whole myth that you're going to go to everybody's house like Bill Maher, we're Democrats, we're not a monolith. So
Yeah.
I never got upset by it because I want to defund the police or defund the police state. But when they go and spend so much time, this is going to lose the election for us. Oh, it's just horrible.
When it actually, in fact, I've covered this, did the opposite. Like the movements and the energy out of the 2020 uprising, if anything, did channel into Biden's victory. Unprecedented victory,
81 million.
insane turnout, right? And we're still getting reamed for it. The progressives are, fuck you.
Joe Manchin. That's the thing. It's Manchin and Cinema, and you look at Manchin Cinema. What do they represent? Whiteness, wealth, and the entire country, including the Democratic establishment, being hijacked by white anxiety and white rage. That's the problem. Always
But
has been.
also,
Yes.
mainstream media is so terrible. I mean, I used to
Correct.
CNN, MSN. CNN would just read whatever fiction that they said Hillary Clinton did. They would just read it like it was news. I mean,
Yeah.
the mainstream media, because they're so invested in both sides, they want it for their ratings.
And
I
the
mean, they're not
horse
all the
race,
same, but
way too focused on the horse race rather than what this actually means for people. And so, yeah, we don't hear, like, Charlie Kirk is talking about how it is hard to own a home. And it's
Yeah.
funny because he's right. The fact that shit is so inaccessible to millennials and younger folks right now is making people not socialists, but turn to more socialist policies. Things like, yeah, reining in the financial sector when it comes to housing, having some sort of rent control, having some sort of social safety net, social welfare system, right? Like, call it fucking socialism or not, which, and again, his party has been doing this forever. Every time you have what Social Security rolls out, it's socialism.
Mm.
Now, if you talk about fucking getting rid of Social Security, you're dead in the water. There's
Well, which
no
was
way.
the 11-point plan by Rick Scott that was treated like a fart in the wind because it basically said get rid of Social Security and income taxes on the middle class, and Republicans are Mitch McConnell's like, yeah, anyway, moving on. Look at
Yeah, ignore that.
ignore
Pay
that.
no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah, exactly. You can't talk about getting rid of all the programs that Democrats, I don't mean to be super partisan here, Democrats when they were better, have pushed for
Yeah,
and have
and fought
saved
for.
people's lives. Because, Waj, you said it, I just got to, before we leave, let's watch this one video from Florida. We're in a Starbucks. who should walk in but former Governor Rick Scott? And a woman is there, probably working a couple jobs, writing for, I don't know, whatever she's doing, studying. And she gives him a piece of her mind, specifically when it comes to healthcare. Take a look.
It doesn't work. In fact, you cut Medicaid, so I couldn't get Obamacare. You're an asshole. You don't care about working people. I'm not talking to you. You don't care about working people. You should be ashamed to show your face around here. A million jobs? Great. Who here has a great job? Or is looking forward to finishing school? You really feel like you have a job coming up? You stripped women of access to public health care. Shame on you, Rick Scott. We depend on those services. Rich people like you don't know what to do. When poor people like us need health services, you cut them. Shame on you, Rick Scott. You're an embarrassment to our state.
Sweet.
I love that. Oh, that
That
was
was
so
awesome.
good.
I haven't seen
Oh.
that clip. I love the guy at the end. Sweet.
Yeah, the dude filming, so the person filming, for those listening, is just says sweet. But
That was the best.
so succinct, so amazing. You're rich, you don't care about all these services you cut. Once again, I don't know, 14 states haven't yet expanded Medicaid, which they can and have 90% of it paid for under Obamacare
Right.
currently. And they're fucking withholding from millions of poor people or people who can't honestly
Agreed.
pay a fuck ton that healthcare costs. I buy on the marketplace. It is ugly. Um,
I get it from my wife. You know, my wife's
Good for
my
you.
wife's a doctor, so from if it wasn't for my wife, I'd be like you. I'd have to just buy it on the marketplace
Do
and
you
pray
guys
to
want a
God.
third?
We have 3 kids.
Oh, that's not what I meant.
Oh,
Oh, you could adopt me. I was just saying we could be a throuple.
oh, you could be the 4th.
Andy's witnessing. I'm saying, do you want a third? Like we could be a throuple that
Oh,
could marry
that
into it.
that shows you how lame I am. That shows you how old and lame I am. I'm like, oh, she's talking about children. Oh, well,
Oh, hey. Ooh.
I'll go talk to my. You know, the funny thing is, I'm so old. Like when people say, oh, were you ever interested in threesomes? And I was just like, I just get confused. There'd be too many parts.
Well, speaking
You
of
have
your
to
kids,
stretch and
I
have
know
fiber.
you have to go actually tuck them in. Say nothing more of this thruple suggestion. And Andy Kindler, Wajahat Ali, thank you guys so much once again.
That was fun. Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having
And isn't
us.
Francesca a great host? That's
She's
also what we were saying.
unbelievable.
I just-
She's so good.
Before we started this extra bonus for you patrons, we were talking about OCD and how Francesca is very good and how hard it is to do this as well as she does. People don't know unless they've done
Cue
it.
music.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I wanted to bring your attention to this story that my producer Paige and I were talking about, which is a story. It's kind of a set 'em up, knock 'em down story of how the right baits Democrats into bad faith discussions about policies that are actually good for Americans and are saving lives currently, actively. And one of those things is around harm reduction. And harm reduction is basically it is an anti-drug policy that allows users and addicts to safely use so that we don't have more overdoses. So people do not get hurt. So people are not in compromised positions. So that they have a place to safely use and access treatment if they choose to, but making sure that people don't have to use in the shadows. And this has been a studied and well worn territory for years and years and years and decades, where harm reduction activists have made a lot of headway on that. And that's shown in some of the policies that even the Biden administration had been taking up until the crack pipe saga. So this week, lots of different right-wing outlets, from Fox to Newsmax to places like the Washington Free Beacon, came out with headlines like this: Biden administration to fund crack pipe distribution to advance racial equality. $30 million programs will provide smoking kits to vulnerable communities. There's been other headlines like Can you believe Biden's giving out crack pipes during Black History Month, which is perhaps the most racist and bad faith reading of harm reduction strategies? Well, is there any validity to this story? What the hell happened? Turns out there was money for safe smoking kits that was part of the package of the American Families Plan, American Rescue Plan. So this is from the Times. Safe smoking kits are listed as just one of the allowable purchases, but these grants, and this was part of like millions of dollars essentially, provide for funding disease and drug testing kits, wound care supplies, condoms, syringes, and vaccines. In a fact sheet about the program, the Department of Health and Human Services said it did not expect grant recipients to purchase all the listed items. So these are now, why would you give out pipes? According to a Harm Reduction International organization, a London based non governmental group, such kits can contain rubber mouthpieces, brass screens, lip balm, disinfectant wipes, and glass stems, the quote unquote crack pipes in question. The contents can vary based on the organization distributing the kit, as well as state and local laws on the distribution of drug paraphernalia. Um, it's not specific to crack cocaine. It can be given to users of meth and opioids. Essentially, it is anytime someone is using obviously a broken pipe, a dirty pipe, they are at risk for all kinds of things, disease, harm, etc. And in addition, and this is something that I didn't know about, when you offer people pipes to use their drugs, you actually prevent them from necessarily turning to other things like syringes, right? So, this is all to say that, of course, the opioid epidemic is real. The drug addiction is real. But cutting off people's ability to smoke or to shoot up has never stopped people from smoking or shooting up. The drugs are there. They're not going to not do it. Right? It only changes the precarity of how they do it. The same thing, harm reduction is essentially a similar approach, I think, to a progressive approach to sex work, right? And the fact that, for example, places like OnlyFans, etc., those places make it easier and safer for sex workers to actually make money without having to be subjected to the streets. And the same can be said for harm reduction, and the same can be said for, do we want this industry to thrive? Do we think it's great that people have to do sex work or are forced into it? Do we think it's great that people might smoke meth? No. But it's going to happen, right? So how do we treat that? And how do we actually support people and thereby get people into treatment? This is from Adam Johnson. He actually was on the show not so long ago, and he's basically essentially what has happened. There's been an entire dialogue, and what happened was that Javier Becerra, the head of Department of Health and Human Services, has essentially walked back the idea that there would even be these safe smoking kits involved in some of that government money for harm reduction policies. Effectively, potentially, and it's not clear, taking them out. As Jen Psaki said this week, there are no crack pipes, supposedly. There are no pipes. Javier Becerra doubles down on that, and I want to read you part of an article, and this is embedded in an article that basically shows you the ramifications of a story like this, which is that now Marco Rubio and Joe fucking Manchin are trying to pass a new bill that's like the anti-pipes bill. They're calling it the Preventing Illicit Paraphernalia for Exchange Systems, or the PIPES Act, prevents the government from purchasing syringes and needles to be used for illegal drug injection, in effect killing any federal funding for harm reduction. And the amount of headway and progress has been made on that. Now, the response from HHS, as I was saying, they released a statement saying that, quote, no federal funding will be used to directly or through subsequent reimbursement of grantees put pipes in safe smoking kits. But as Adam Johnson points out, that's what safe smoking kits are. They have pipes. And so he writes, the White House attempted to get out of this scandal by insisting that the kits they set aside funds for didn't explicitly involve pipes, but basically nobody believes that. Pipes are almost always part of smoking kits, as many fact checkers have noted, and they are so for good reason. Glass pipes can crack and cut lips, which increases disease and transmission and infections. Additionally, smoking certain drugs is almost always preferable to needle consumption, providing more drug tools increases over interactions with health workers. In other words, on substance, the policy virtually every public health expert agrees is totally standard and worth defending. But because the right went crazy with this, now suddenly Biden is scurrying from a policy that's actually pretty good. And to show you how good it is and how utterly hypocritical the outrage has been over this, Tom Cotton single-handedly, I don't know, the one of the dumber, one of the most sort of like, I don't know, he's no me gusta is what I'm trying to say. My brain is on fry right now. Tom Cotton, the dude who like penned a letter to the Ayatollah of Iran and was like, I don't know what Obama told you, but like, we don't want to do a nuclear deal with you. Signed, Tom Cotton. Rabbit print. Tom Cotton tweeted, unfortunately, HHS is still proudly using your tax dollars to fund heroin syringes for drug addicts, which is actually dope if they are, and they are. But ironically, just 2 days before tweeting that, he actually created a commission on combating synthetic opioid trafficking, and that involved syringe services. So on February 8th, the commission, co-chaired by Tom Cotton, issued a report that supports syringe services and more harm reduction. And yet, because the right grabbed a hold of this, who knows what's going to happen to that either? The same goes, I mean, this is what happens when we politicize fucking everything. Same goes for like drug prices. Republicans hate paying more for medicine. I'm not talking about like everyday people. I'm talking about politicians. They fucking hate it. This was part of the show that I did for MSNBC, was talking to, a Utah Republican who was like, yeah, our state employees, we have to pay so much for them to get their basic, Humira or, whatever insulin, that it's cheaper for us to send them to Mexico, buy drugs there because they're cheaper, and then fly them back here. So, but then once it gets politicized, i.e., harm reduction is suddenly a Democratic plot to give you all crack pipes, then Republicans scurry away from it because they have no principles. But not only Republicans scurry away from it, Democrats are scurrying away from it. So here is an example of a good policy that has been politicized and now might be scrapped, which is incredibly sad because let's remember how fucking bad the overdose epidemic and drug deaths have been, especially in the pandemic. This is a chart between 2015 and 2021. And we are at now, last year, over 100,000 people overdosed on drugs. 100,000. Now, yes, 900,000 people died from a global pandemic, but my God, is the opioid crisis something that we all can get behind? Especially now that Trump's out of office and it doesn't have that weird tinge of we care about white people dying, as the opioid epidemic has disproportionately, well, actually, I don't know if it's disproportionately, but it has actually impacted working class white people. Who knows? But it is a rough moment, and it's not a moment to be baited into this bullshit. So again, Max talked about, Biden being afraid of not having enemies, and this is, you have it. You can't be afraid of your own policy. If someone points out your policy, be like, hell yeah, we're giving people crack pipes. Yeah. And they're safely getting high. And guess what? They're not dying. If it's administrated, if we understand what's in it, I mean, right now you have a fentanyl epidemic. Fentanyl's getting laced up on everything. People are dying. And let us remember that if drugs were legal, if heroin, if cocaine, I mean, that shit is scary. Of course it's scary. These are heavy drugs. But they would be regulated. I don't believe in throwing them to the open market. I have a lot of thoughts on legalization of marijuana and how it was thrown to the open market. I much prefer a regulated system so people actually understand what they're putting in their body. Be quality controlled.